All right, good afternoon, Amy Anderson. How are you back there? All right, just checking. Miss Burgess, you good back there? All right, just for the record, all you guys out there in Zoom world, we've got about 55 people crammed in. No, not really. We have a few people here in the CCC training room, but I appreciate your time. We're going to get started here, continuing with Way of the Shepherd, which I think is going to go to the top of my list of one of my favorite books, possibly.
Yeah, she must.
So as we're going, I think Stephanie is monitoring the chat. So if anybody has anything on the Zoom, need to send us a message. Stephanie, I'm sure will come in and throw something at me if I need to stop for a second. So again, we're continuing with Way of the Shepherd. We're going to do a quick review from the last session. If you remember, the book covers 7 management or leadership principles. And we're going to review the first one real quick from last time or 2 weeks ago. The first was know the condition of your flock. So if you're on a team, any type of leadership position, again, of course, for the most part, these discussions we're having, we are trying to relate to here at GSM, but these apply to any group or team or your family or anything that you might be involved with from a leadership perspective. So know the condition of your flock. So follow the status of your people as well as the status of the work. That means you got to be involved. You've got to stay involved with your team and know what's going on. You can't just every now and then get involved to kind of check up on what's going on. Get to know your flock, one sheep at a time. Engage your people on a regular basis. Keep your eyes and ears open, question and follow through. The second principle was discover the shape of your sheep. That's not a literal term, okay? Discover the shape of your sheep. Your choice of sheep can make flock management easier or harder. Start with healthy sheep, or you'll inherit someone else's problems. And then know the shape of your sheep to make sure they're in the right fold. So SHAPE was an acronym that means strengths, heart, attitude, personality, and experiences. So strength simply means you must have the skill set to do the job. I'm paraphrasing and shortening these in a little bit from the book, but strengths must have the skill set to do the job. Heart, how is their motivation? What are they motivated about? And what do they have passion? Do they have passion for what they are doing? Attitude, we take attitude over talent any day. We want positive, can-do people. Personality, we are all different. Do the personalities fit with the job and the mission? And experiences, how do their life experiences affect the work in the team? So how do their life experiences affect the work in team? So that's what we mean by SHAPE. These are all things that a leader or a good leader should keep their eyes on. Next was the homework from the last session. First was spend 15 minutes each day thinking what actions you can take to know your flock better. If you were honest with the initial ranking of your team, what actions can you take to move your team to a higher score? If you remember earlier in the last session, we talked about ranking how you felt about your team and also about your leader. Decide if being the shepherd of your flock is the most important part of your job and make sure your flock knows it by your actions. How can you improve your personal score as a shepherd of your team and flock? And that was back at how you were rating your team and how your team interacts and what they're accomplishing every day. Evaluate all of your team members following the SHAPE format. Are they a good fit for your flock? Are you letting them know specifically how they can improve their shape? Again, not literally, it's an acronym. What conversation can you have with your leader to help them improve their score with you? I do think something that's really important if you're a leader of a team and for that team, creating a culture and an environment where the team members are comfortable coming to you as a leader to talk about whatever. Could be work related, but it's not necessarily just work related. But you have to have a good environment where they can come talk to you about things that they think are issues, things that they think you as a leader can improve. And as a leader, or at least a good leader, you really need to be able to, you really need to be able to take that feedback from your team. And then the last bit of homework was to read the next 2 chapters for today's session, which was the 3rd and 4th principles. So the 3rd management leadership principle is help your sheep identify with you. Help your sheep identify with you. So if you've read this, tagging his sheep when he was adding a new sheep to his flock. And this was not the best image I could come up with, but this is literally a photo of somebody tagging a young sheep. So you can imagine that. I don't envision us physically tagging anyone with the GSM tag, even though, maybe, well, Dave Casey said maybe we can get the GSM chip. That might not be such a bad idea. We can have some artificial intelligence going on around here. We can just talk to you, into your ear, right into your ear, wherever you're at, Dave, and we can. But the point there is to, and as it relates to the flock and Dr. Newman's flock, was he was making sure that he was all of his sheep are identified as being a part of the flock. But the main point is, what type of sheep did he want to have in his flock? So again, principle number 3 is help your sheep identify with you. First, build trust with your followers by modeling authenticity, integrity, and compassion. So I kind of almost feel like we could stop with that one sentence. Kind of going back to what I said earlier, going back to principle number 2, you have to be open as a leader and have an environment where your team members feel like they can come talk to you about pretty much anything. But in order to do that, you have to build trust. If your team members don't trust you, they're not going to feel comfortable coming to talk to you. And the only way to build trust is through modeling authenticity, integrity, and compassion. We've talked about those terms, especially integrity and compassion, before, but authenticity ties into that, because if you're not an authentic leader, basically means that you act in front of your team the same way that you act when you're not with your team. You act the same way at home or in the community as you do when you're at work. To me, that's kind of the basics of being authentic. Integrity, of course, is, do you do the same things all the time, especially when somebody's not looking, somebody's not watching, are you doing the right thing? And then compassion is just being able to have caring about not just those on your team, but your fellow individuals, fellow humans in general. Kind of the definition of compassion. But then you've got the other side of, you got to set high standards of performance. I think for the most part, we do a decent job of this at GSM. We do set high standards. I'm not sure that we do a great job of holding those standards all the time and holding the line on those standards and making sure we're all held accountable to those standards. But if you read our core values, you read our performance standards, you go through a startup sheet on one of our jobs, you go through the specs on the work we're trying to accomplish each and every day. If you listen to Donna at orientation, we are setting some high standards of performance day to day. Relentlessly communicate your values and sense of mission. I'm afraid I paused when I typed this one in. I think some areas at GSM, we do a really good job of communicating. I think some areas we don't do a good job of communicating. I think we do a good job of communicating our values and our sense of mission on occasion. Maybe when somebody first comes to work here, maybe when it's time for annual reviews. But I don't think we do it relentlessly. I really like that word, relentlessly, which to me means every interaction as a leader, maybe not every single one, but there's got to be a good, consistent, relentless communication about our values in the sense of mission and what we're trying to accomplish day to day. So I think that's something that in general, I think we could work on here at GSM. Next is define the calls for your people and tell them where they fit in. Define the calls for your people and tell them where they fit in. So we hire individuals or bring good people onto the team. You know, earlier we mentioned one of the reviews was we'll hire for attitude over talent. So you got to take that person with a good attitude and help them understand where they fit in. Where can they go? How are they going to grow within the company? And what is the cause that's bigger that we're working for that's bigger than ourselves? You know, it's easy to get caught up in, hey, we're going to go get that air conditioning running, we'll get that roof repaired, that roof installed, we're going to get that unit set on the roof, we're going to answer the telephone call. But what is the cause? Is there a cause greater than that we're trying to accomplish every day? Is there, you know, what's the real purpose behind what we're doing each and every day? Is it for myself? Is it for your coworkers? Is it for the community? You know, I know the residential group has heard me say this, but I personally believe that our community is better off because GSM is here. If GSM wasn't here, then the people in our community and our customers would have to deal with somebody else. I had a conversation with a customer just a little while ago who we put a residential customer, we put a unit in for them. Oh, last fall. Almost, actually, it was last August because the warranty date, well, actually, the warranty date is 15 months. So it hadn't been quite 15 months yet, but over the weekend, the unit leaked on their ceiling and they had water coming out of their ceiling. And it happens to be a customer that 14 years ago, the exact same thing happened. And he's been a customer for us in the same house for all 14 years. And he asked me a question during the phone call today that said, I'd really like you to tell me why this happened and that this is never going to happen again. So it was a series of unfortunate events that caused this. Part of it was our problem, part of it was the fault of the landscaper. But again, because part of it was our fault, we're going to take 100% responsibility. But I didn't tell him. My answer to his question was, how can you make sure this never happens on this system again? And I said, the only way I can tell you that this will never happen again is if you move. But what I did tell him, I told him there's no way that I can assure you this is never going to happen again. But what I can assure you is that we are going to react the exact same way. We're going to respond and we're going to take ownership and responsibility of what happens. If it has anything to do with the work or the quality of work that we did, we were absolutely going to step in and take care of that. And ultimately, that's all we can do. We had to not make excuses. We had to, you know, we found ourselves in a situation where we were partially responsible, but at GSM, when that's the case, we take full responsibility. So that's, for me, part of the cause greater than just us replacing that unit. If that customer was dealing with somebody else, it's possible they would have told him, well, the landscaper is actually the reason that this happened, not GSM. And I could have told him that, but that wouldn't have been following the core values that we rely on to judge how we act each and every day. Next, remember that great leadership isn't just professional, it's personal. I hope that the residential group especially would say this, but I think most of the residential leadership especially has heard me say that, or never say maybe that that old school saying of you keep personal at home and business is business, kind of like The Godfather. Well, there's no such thing as that. Okay, everything we do here can affect us at home, and things that are going on at home are going to affect us here, and that's just the way it is. So as a leader, it's important that we understand that and we have that empathy and that compassion. And that goes back to where it talks about getting to know your flock that you're leading. You need to be aware and open to hearing and understanding the things that are going on, things that maybe not here, not just here at GSM, but things so that might be going on elsewhere. So Something that Ted said during this part of the book, he made two statements in this chapter that really stuck with me. One was, I want my people to have a heart for what they do. And secondly, he said, I want them to feel excited about coming to work in the morning. Let that sink in for a second. It was at the very beginning of the chapter when he was contemplating the lessons he had just heard from Dr. Newman, and before he was getting ready to get the lesson about tagging his sheep. I want my people to have a heart for what they do, and I want them to feel excited about coming to work in the morning. So if you, as a leader, knowing what you're doing each and every day, if you're working with a team, what does that look like? Think to yourself, what does that look like where we have created a culture and an environment where our teams have a heart for what they do and they feel excited about coming to work in the morning. Now, I realize that we're not getting up and walking through the gates of Disney World every morning, which would be nice. And the reality of work is work at times, and every day brings on a different challenge. But as a general statement, I think that is something as leaders that if we could strive for that and have it as a goal, then we would definitely get closer to that cause and what we're trying to accomplish and the mission that we're trying to accomplish each and every day. All right, the next chapter was the fourth management and leadership principle, which states, make your pasture a safe place. To be clear, it does not say make your pasture a safe space, which is a phrase that I'm not a fan of in the world of 2021. But make your pasture a safe place. So if you remember, every time Dr. Newman and Ted got together, it would turn out to be a pretty good adventure for Ted, maybe something that he was not used to. And this one, if you remember, Dr. Newman took him to a pasture and a flock that was not in good shape, a flock that had not been taken care of. The lands weren't good for grazing. There were flies. The fence had not been taken care of. It was just a bad overall situation, and the flock was not being cared for. And it was obvious. I thought it was interesting in this particular section when Ted, after what Dr. Newman had exposed him to, immediately when Ted saw the flock, this flock here compared to Dr. Newman's flock, it was immediate and obvious that something was wrong. It was immediate and obvious to Ted that this was not a safe place for this particular flock. Have you ever been somewhere, let's just say whether it's a previous job, come into a team here at GSM? I would hope not, but maybe that was the case. Going into a restaurant, going into a classroom, going somewhere where you immediately felt that there was some bad vibe going on, or something seemed out of place. That's kind of the same principle for me. So make your pasture a safe place. First, keep your people well informed. Keep your people well informed. This is a big one. Our teams here can take both the good news and the bad news. Human nature is that most people, now not everyone, but most people will fill the gaps in with something negative. They'll fill the gaps in with bad news in their minds if they don't have a leadership group or somebody in leadership that's sharing the information with them, whether it's financial related, whether it's job related, whether it's things they need to improve on, whether it's COVID related. I don't want to veer off too far here, but I think in the last 18 months, if information had been shared more openly and more quickly with most of us, we would have a better feeling for the information that we are trying to absorb now from whether it's the health department, the government, the media. Keep your people well informed with the truth, not just information for the sake of information. Infuse every position with importance. Infuse every position with importance. Here at GSM, I strongly believe that we don't hire anyone into any position that we don't think is important. Every position has a piece, some task, some part of the mission that is super important, and without them, we would not be able to accomplish our mission in general. Everybody doesn't feel that way. Part of leadership is helping your teams understand how important what they're doing is and how important they are to the team and the group. Cull chronic instigators from the flock. Again, this is not the first time we've heard this message in the last few months, but you got to cull chronic instigators from the flock. I think one of the ways that Dr. Newman talked about this was, he had one sheep that kept trying to tear up the fence or get out, and that can lead others to think the grass is greener elsewhere when it's really not. And I think in the last section, Joel even showed a picture of lamb chops, because I think that's what happened to that chronic instigator. It's very similar. Now, obviously, we're not going to make lamb chops out of anyone. No, we're not going to do that. But cull chronic instigators from the flock. One of the hard parts of leadership. Regularly rotate the sheep to fresh pastures. When I read that, that seemed obvious when you're talking about sheep and pastures. What does that mean for a place like GSM? If you look at if you look at, get back to regular company meetings every month, you'll see the opportunities that we have throughout the company. The development that we hope our team members will achieve over time. And that's kind of how I relate that to a place like GSM. Reassure the sheep by staying visible. As leaders, you got to be in front of your team. You got to be in front of your team. If your team's out in the field all the time, your direct report team, got to go see them. Got to go see them. Got to ask them how you can help. What's going on? How can you make their jobs easier? Part of the role of leadership is to remove as many obstacles as possible to help your teams be as successful as possible. So you got to be visible. Don't give problems time to fester. Don't give problems time to fester. This is a good leadership principle. One of my favorites, and it can be very difficult. Give you an example. Best thing I do is come up with an example in our real world. In the past, there's been situations here where someone has come to me to ask questions, or, for lack of a better term, maybe complain about another team member at GSM. I think what I have discovered, the best way to handle those situations is to get both of those individuals in a room together to discuss it immediately. As a leader, if you give in to that discussion, or what I would call, frankly, that's gossip, if you give in to that and don't allow the other person the opportunity to get that discussed, you got to talk about that now. That's a good example of what I think this means. Don't give problems time to fester. That's also why you got to stay visible. You got to go ask your teams all the time, how's it going? How can I help? And if you create an environment where they feel that you will listen, they'll tell you. If you haven't created an environment where they feel that you're going to listen as a leader, then they might not tell you. That's why having that environment is so important, where they know that you're going to listen and take action on that. So I know you can been waiting for the homework for next session. So kind of think about the third and fourth leadership principle. On the third one, how can you better build trust with your teams? Are you communicating consistently Do you really know those on your team? For the fourth principle, do you keep your team well informed? Do you handle problems immediately? Do you keep your team well informed, and do you handle problems immediately? And there's 7 chapters or 7 principles in the book. For this last one, I said, let's go ahead and read the last 4 chapters, which includes the last 3 principles. And then the last chapter is only a couple pages long, which is called the end of the interview. But the next 3 chapters, and again, it's roughly 40 more pages, which is what we did, I think, in the first session. So think about the third leadership principle. I'm going to read this again, then I'm going to attempt to show a video. We'll see what happens. Last time I tried that didn't work too well. How can you better build trust with your teams? Are you communicating consistently? Do you know those on your team? And for the fourth principle, do you keep your team well informed? And do you handle problems immediately? All right, this is a YouTube link. I'm going to play it, but I'm going to have to give credit. This is super short. I'm going to give credit to Mark Benton. He shared this with me a while back. And this seemed like an appropriate time to share this one. So if you don't have any volume, it's okay. There's no actually audio except for a little background music to this. I can skip ads. And we'll talk about the hermit. Right, again, thank you. I thought that video was appropriate for what we just talked about. I think that actually, I could be wrong. I think that was from Call of the Wild, but I could be wrong. So that, again, we'll share the homework and the sections to read for the next session, which I'll have to confirm the dates because I think the next Monday is Labor Day. So I'm not sure if we'll do that on Tuesday, the day after Labor Day, or the following Monday, but we'll confirm that with everybody before the next session. So again, everybody, I appreciate your time. And let's try to remember these leadership lessons and discussions as you're dealing with your teams and family and anything you're involved with in the community. Thank you very much.